Today we'll explore the invisible backbone of design: structure, navigation, and user flows. These elements shape how we use apps and websites, even if we don't notice them. What is information architecture? Information architecture, or IA, is how content is organized. Think of it as the skeleton of a body or the foundation of a house. It tells us where everything goes. Example: in a supermarket, fruits, milk, and snacks are grouped in aisles. Without that structure, shopping would be chaos. Why IA matters. Let's talk about why information architecture really matters. When IA is good, users don't even notice it. They just succeed in their tasks. Content feels naturally organized, everything is easy to find, and users feel competent and in control. Think of a store with clear signs. You can quickly find what you need without stress. But with bad IA, the opposite happens. Users feel lost, frustrated, and overwhelmed. Content is disorganized or poorly labeled, and many people simply give up and abandon the product. It's like walking into a store without any signs. Finding something becomes a struggle. So here's the bottom line. Effective IA makes tasks effortless, while poor IA creates friction and frustration. Think of IA, information architecture, like the skeleton of a body or the foundation of a house. You rarely notice it, but it supports everything. Determines structure. IA determines the structure. What sections exist, how content is grouped, and how parts relate. Dictates location. It also dictates where everything lives, so users don't have to guess. Example: a supermarket. The aisles are your IA: fruit, dairy, snacks, clearly labeled. With good IA, you find what you need fast. Without it, items are scattered, signs are missing, and every task becomes a struggle. Key idea: good IA is invisible. You simply feel in control. It's the foundation that makes navigation and user flow possible. Department store. Example: imagine you want to buy a hammer. First, you check the floor directory, DIY section. Next, you go to the tools aisle. Finally, you pick the hammer. That's IA, moving from general to specific in clear steps. The IA-driven process starts with planning the problem, and only then can we begin to design a solution. One of the first steps in design is information architecture. Information architecture means organizing, structuring, and labeling content. Let's recap information architecture. Information architecture helps users in 3 key ways. First, it helps people find. It makes information easy to locate and access. Second, it helps reduce friction by eliminating barriers and simplifying interactions. And third, it helps people save time by streamlining journeys and reducing unnecessary effort. Think of it like this. The user starts with a goal. Information architecture works in the background, guiding the path until the goal is reached. And here's the key takeaway. When information architecture works well, it feels invisible. It makes tasks easier, smoother, and much more efficient. IA versus user flow. Information architecture and user flow are connected but different. On Netflix, the IA is the structure. It's how movies and shows are organized into categories like action, comedy, or documentaries. It tells us where the content lives. But the user flow is the journey. For example, when a user opens Netflix, taps on comedy, scrolls through the options, picks a movie, and presses play, that sequence of steps is the flow. So, IA defines the structure, while user flow defines the movement through that structure. What is navigation? Navigation is how users move around an app or website. It's like the map that helps them explore content and features. On Netflix, navigation happens in different ways. At the top, you have the navigation bar, where users can go to Home, New and Popular, or My List. There's also the search bar, where you can type directly the title of a movie or series. And of course, the categories menu, where you can browse genres like comedy, action, or documentaries. Good navigation works together with information architecture, which is the structure, and with user flow, which is the journey. If navigation is clear, users quickly find what they want. If it's not, they feel lost. Types of navigation. There isn't just one way to navigate. In fact, apps and websites often use different types of navigation together. For example, global navigation is like the main menu, always visible, letting you jump to the big sections like home, series, or movies. Then we have local navigation, which helps you move inside a specific section. For example, once you're in movies, you can filter only action or comedy. And finally, search navigation lets users type exactly what they want, like Stranger Things, and go straight to it. Different navigation types work together to make sure users can move smoothly and never feel lost. What is a user flow? A user flow is like a map. It shows all the steps a person takes when using an app or a website to get something done. It starts when the user begins. Then they take an action, sometimes they make a choice, and finally, they reach their goal. In other words, a user flow shows the entire journey, from the very first step until the task is complete. Think of user flow like. To better understand user flows, think of them like following a recipe or using GPS directions. When you bake a cake, you don't just throw ingredients together. You follow a recipe step by step. Find the recipe, read the ingredients list, follow the steps in order, and finally enjoy your cake. That's just like completing a user flow. Or think of GPS directions. You start at your current location, follow step-by-step instructions, make turns at intersections, and finally arrive at your destination. Just like GPS guides you to a new place, a user flow guides users through your app or website. User flow, path to a goal. A user flow is the path someone takes to achieve a goal, broken down into small, manageable steps. Let's look at an example. The goal is to order a pizza. First, the user opens the app. Then, they choose the pizza. Next, they enter the delivery address, followed by making the payment. Finally, they get a confirmation that the order is on its way. User flows break down complex goals into simple steps, just like following a recipe or using GPS to reach your destination. The building blocks. Shapes. User flows are built using just a few simple shapes, and each one has a special meaning that makes the journey easy to follow. The circle or oval shows the very start or the very end of a flow. For example, app opened or order confirmed. The rectangle represents an action the user takes, like clicking Add to Cart or filling in payment information. The diamond shows a decision point where the user, or sometimes the system, has to make a choice. For example, is the user logged in? Or, which plan do they choose? These shapes are the building blocks that make user flows quick to understand at a glance. Putting it all together. Now that we know the building blocks, let's see how they all work together in a complete user flow. The flow begins with the start point. The user searches for a product, then adds it to the cart. At this stage, there's a decision point. Is the user logged in? If the answer is yes, they go straight to payment, and the flow ends with order complete. If the answer is no, they are guided to sign up, and once the account is created, the journey continues. This example shows how circles, rectangles, and diamonds combine to represent the entire path from beginning to end. Remember, user flows capture the whole journey, with each shape representing a different type of step in the process. Why user flows? Matter user flows are more than just diagrams. They're powerful tools that transform how we design apps and websites. They help us reveal problems early, so we can find and fix issues before anything is built. They help us focus on the user, keeping their needs and goals at the center of the design. They also simplify communication, creating a shared understanding across the entire team. And finally, user flows allow us to map complex journeys. Even the most complicated user experiences can be visualized step by step. In short, user flows are like a map that guides a person's journey through an app or website. Find problems early. User flows help designers identify issues before building the actual product, saving both time and resources. On the left, we see early detection. At the user flow stage, problems can be fixed on paper, changes are easier to make, and it's cost-effective. On the right, we see late detection. After development, problems must be fixed in code. Changes are harder to implement, and everything becomes more expensive. It's like finding a wrong turn on a map before you start driving. Fixing a problem on a drawing is much cheaper and faster than fixing it in a finished app that has already been coded. The key benefit is clear. Early detection saves time, money, and effort. Let's recap the key takeaways about user flows. First, user flow equals a journey map. It's like a map that shows how someone moves through an app or website to get something done. Second, path to a goal. Every user flow shows the steps a person takes to achieve a specific goal from start to finish. Third, find problems early. By drawing out user flows, we can identify potential issues before the actual app or website is built, saving time, money, and effort. Fourth, clear communication. User flows create a shared understanding among designers, developers, and project managers about how the app should work. And finally, simple and powerful. User flows are easy to understand and create, making them one of the most powerful tools in UX design, something that everyone on a team can use.